I don't think there's any logistics we got to talk about. So let's get into this and do some examples. We'll pick up some examples that we were at least attempting last time. We got decently far. We got the content out there, but we didn't get to see the final product. So hopefully today goes a bit better in that regard, and we'll not only get content but also the final output of what should happen. So to start that, let me get the right window open. So to start that, so the big issue last time was not being able to get the certbot up and running. So we're going to go through that process again. That's where we'll start off. Is with the certbot, except this time, actually, that's not where we're going to start off. I lied with there. But we're going to start with a fresh server. All I did here, I'll fill you in on the things that I did do for setup. But I got a brand new DigitalOcean droplet because last time it was all my wildcard configuration and I really jumbled up my Python. I have 3 different Python installs on that server. I have things messed up fairly bad on that server in that regard. So somewhere in there, certbot didn't work. So with a fresh install, we're going to hope certbot works well for us. But I do have a new IP address. I don't have it open, but I'll fill you in on what I did do. Is I went to Google Domains. I went to my jessehartloff.com domain name and redirected the DNS to this IP address instead of the other IP address. And I'm going to start migrating some things over to this instance because with the apps, with the other server, I'm really tapped out on resources, so I want to start putting some things over here to free everything up a bit. So I updated the DNS to point to this IP address, and what I want to do is set up my Nginx on this machine, on this instance at least, to be able to take that traffic from jessehartloff.com. So what I've done is installed Nginx on the server already, just so we're not watching another install script. We'll look at enough install scripts today. But I'm going to SSH into this server. DigitalOcean, one of the nice things I like about it is it gives you root access. So I'm going to log in as root to that IP address to log into this server. I have my SSH key set up so I don't have to do any username and password. I have my SSH private key installed on this machine. And I have the SSH public key installed on the machine I just SSH'd into. So the SSH keys do a handshake, legitimate, authenticate me, and then say you have access to this server because we have your public key listed as a trusted public key, and you have the corresponding private key. So you're legit. Let's let you in. Let's log you in. And I don't have to type in any passwords. And I have absolutely nothing in my home directory. It's a nice, clean install. If I go to etc. Nginx, I did install Nginx. So pretty much the only thing I've done on this server so far is did apt-get install Nginx. That's really it. I don't believe I really did anything else except a little bit of Nginx setup that we'll see here too. I just wanted to make sure we wouldn't hit too many issues right away. So I installed Nginx, and I want to show a little bit about how Nginx is set up so we can get an idea of what's going on here. So if I go into my Nginx directory, where all of my Nginx files are, when you install Nginx, it creates this directory and has all the configuration. And if I look at the main configuration file, there are all kinds of settings. Most of which we're not going to touch this file at all. So all of which we're not going to change. We're going to keep the defaults. But you can see all kinds of settings that you can make. You can see Nginx, fresh install, latest version, still no TLS 1.3. The new standard is out there. It is available, but even Nginx doesn't have it installed by default. No default support. You'd have to add it. I don't know if it's ready for that, if I could just add it right here. But worth noting, I suppose. Or, no, I'm second guessing myself. Is it, never mind. Let's move on. Some log files, if somebody accesses this server, every access is going to get a log entry in this log file. So every time somebody makes an HTTP request, it's going to be recorded in this file, along with a little bit of information about that user. Every time there's an error, of course, in our error log files. So we can go to these files. Actually, that var log nginx. No. Pico var log nginx access, and you can see just some of my testing. So we get some information about that. We get the request line, the user agent, and it looks like that's it. And I think that was, we were looking at these earlier because they're printed to standard out as well. I think this is the response code, the status code that was sent back, and also the number of bytes is, I believe, what these things are. But I'm partially guessing on that. But I don't know what else they would be. And also the IP address, if you want to track IP addresses for whatever reason. Some strange activity on your server, you don't know what it is, you at least have the IP address so you can get a decent idea of who those people are. Let's get out of here. Let's go back into our configuration. So when something goes wrong or right, you can take a look at the log files and see what was going on. And then our includes any configuration files in the configuration directory. Those are all going to also be added to the configuration of the server. And more importantly for our purposes today, what we want to discuss is everything in the sites enabled directory. So every configuration file in the sites enabled directory is also going to be added to the configuration of this instance of Nginx. That's the directory that we saw last time where I had lots of different domain names running on the same server. I threw all of those configurations in the sites enabled directory, and then the main configuration file went through all of those files and added those to the configuration. So when I want to add a new domain name, I'm not editing anything in this file, anything in my Nginx configuration. I'm just going to the Nginx and sites enabled directory, adding a new configuration file there, and this wildcard takes care of that, finds it, does what it needs to do with it, and serves it up. So that's all the top level Nginx configuration. Let's see, I don't believe there's anything in the confd directory by default. So nothing in there. So the rest of our configuration is all in sites enabled, where you'll have a default. I'll show the default. So there's also this sites available directory where you can store your sites that are not currently being used. If you want to just take down a site, but you don't want to delete that configuration file, you move it over to the sites available. So we have the default setup. This is what comes with Nginx. We're going to listen on port 80. We're going to define where we should serve files from, this root var www.html directory. We're going to look for all of these index files. If there's a file with any of these names in this directory, that's what's going to be served at the root path. The server name with a wildcard. And then a 404 message. Not found for any path you request. And then some extra stuff to help you get started. Something they provide with the base install. And if we, oops, I forgot what it was. This var www html pico var www html. Whoa. So there's only one file in the directory. So there's one file, the index file, which just says, welcome to Nginx. How you doing? So that's the default. If you just install Nginx, it's going to serve every file in that directory, and it has one default index file. And that's what's going to happen when you first install a fresh install of Nginx. You're going to go to your browser. It's going to say, go to your browser, localhost, port 80. That's what you're going to see is that index file. So we want to change that a little bit. So so I don't have the default server. I have my own jessehartloff.com configuration, which is going to be added through that wildcard. I have very simple configuration here. I'm going to give my server a name. So Nginx knows the domain name for this server. So when it gets requests for the server name jessehartloff.com, it knows what to do. It knows that it's in the right place. We're going to listen on port 80, and location is you can specify the path where you want to serve files. So if I did if somebody requested the path index, this is what's going to be served. And then anything that starts with that path name. So if I do location / this is all traffic should apply these settings. So everything that's requested for this server should have these two settings applied. And I'm going to do the similar thing that we saw in the default configuration in the default server. Is we're going to specify the root directory. This is the directory that will effectively be the working directory for Nginx for this server that we're setting up for jessehartloff.com. Any request made, the path of that request, Nginx is going to look in this directory for a file name matching that path, and if there is a file name in this path that matches the request name, so somebody requests functions.js, if there's a functions.js file in this directory, Nginx is going to serve it up. And then the index, I want to specify which files should be served at the root index. So if somebody just goes to my website, jessehartloff.com, which files should they see? And I'm going to specify index.html, standard configuration. Nginx and Apache, they both use this convention. Index.html or some variation thereof, some different file extensions, index.php, whatever, is typically the root path. That's what's going to be served on the root path. So any request here is going to look for an index.html file in this directory. So if I go to that directory, I better have an index.html file. User share Nginx HTML, and then I only have one file in that directory, index.html, but if I had more files, they would all be served from this directory. And I just took the default Nginx. Okay, let's edit some HTML just to show that this is the file being served. Let me not shout. So we'll edit something on the fly just to show that this is the file being served. And anything we add to that directory would also be served as static files from our website. So when we go to jessehartloff.com, we should see. So I updated my DNS. I updated my Nginx. I reloaded Nginx, which would be too far away. Nginx reload -s. I had to cheat. -s reload. That's going to reload all the configuration files just to make sure I didn't change anything since the last time I reloaded. But everything should work. God, damn it. It would do this to me. Let me go to network. Make sure we're disabling the cache. Thank you. Okay. We got cached on that one. That's one big reason to use Nginx is the caching. It has wonderful caching capabilities. So we got cached there. That's fine. If you don't have the console open, this disable cache doesn't do anything. Once you open the console, that respects that disabled cache button, which is good because I always want disabled cache. That's the behavior I would want when I'm actively developing and have this open. But when I don't have this open, I want to take advantage of caching. So that's fine. We a little panic early on, but hey, we're good. All right, so we have this site all set up, but we're not secure. We're not secure on this site. So let's go to our certbot. Let's do the installs. And if you want to hit up the chat, we can talk a little bit while this is installing. It's going to take just a decent amount of time. It won't be the longest wait that we'll have during this lecture. That'll be when we build the Docker containers. But it will be a little bit of a wait. And let's do these one at a time so we can see kind of what's happening on each one. Let's get this in the sidebar. Shrink this. What's up, Tomand? Let me get the first command, apt-get update in here. So we're gonna update apt-get, update all the repositories to make sure that we have access to all the latest packages that are hosted that we can access with apt-get. So that's the first thing we need to do. Oh, it's already done. Apt-get. Install some dependencies. Software. Properties. Comment. I feel like I did type that right. Get some dependencies in here. Tommen, there's a massive lag on the team project website. Yes. So that's part of why I'm setting up this second server. I'm out of RAM, so it's paging, which is very slow. Instead of using very fast RAM, it's using the hard drive as RAM right now. So unfortunately, we do have a lot of lag. We also have some other issues with WebSockets. If you hard-coded WS anywhere in your code, or WS localhost, even worse, those aren't going to be working right now. We're not going to hold that against the teams because that's something that would work in your development environment. So as long as your video shows that it's working fine, we're not going to hold that against you. But that is going to show some symptoms on the deployment because the deployment's using WSS on a domain name, not localhost. So just some things to be aware of. Even if that deployed site isn't working, that's still fine. So I'm spreading out, separating my stuff to get around that. 312 DigitalOcean discount code. No, I don't know. They might have some student discounts. I don't know if they do or don't, but it's possible. Add apt repository universe. So apt-get by default doesn't know about certbot, so we have to add the certbot repositories to our apt-get. So when we apt-get install, it's going to look in a few extra places than it would out of the box, and those places are going to have our certbot install available. Certbot PPA certbot. And with those new repositories, it's fine. Why would you grab my attention to tell me that? So we're going to add those, and then once we add those repositories, we want to update Git again, make sure we have all of the latest indices, all of the latest stuff available to us to be able to download. So with all that, we're able to install what we came here to install, apt-get install certbot. Sure. And notice how I had to say yes there. It grabbed my attention. It said, hey, this is going to take up some disk space. Are you sure you want to do this? And we say yes. With the other one, apt-get install, I'm going to give it this -y option. You have this all over your your Docker files, if you do a -y option when I install this second thing, certbot Nginx install Python 3 certbot Nginx. I'm going to add this -y flag. When I add that -y flag, it doesn't ask me. My -y is saying, yeah, I'm sure I want to install this. Don't ask me about the disk space that it's going to take up. So usually right here, it would grab your attention and say, you sure you want to do this? It's going to take some room. That -y gets rid of that prompt. So when we're building these things in Docker, we can't have Docker be alerted and then have Docker press Y on the keyboard and hit enter, or send that to standard in. Rather, it's not something we can do in the automation. I mean, we could, but it'd be a pain in the ass. So we'd give it that -y flag saying, yes, I'm sure, don't bother stopping and asking me. It makes it a lot more suitable for scripting. So that's why we always have that -y option in our Docker files. And then let's run certbot and pray that it works this time. Nginx, do it for me. It'd help if I didn't miss the T. I double checked all my other commands and I had them right. But this one I didn't double check. All right. This jammed me up last time. Okay. Enter email address. Use for urgent renewal of security tokens. Sure. I agree. No, I don't think I want more junk mail. And then, so thankfully we got past the part where we didn't get last time, because we have a fresh install of Ubuntu. I haven't messed anything up here yet, so certbot gets to do its thing and work. So now it's going to read all my Nginx configuration files. It's going to look through there, and can you do elliptic curve with certbot? I'm not positive. I haven't played too much with the settings of certbot, so I wouldn't know off the top of my head. By default, it's RSA, but that doesn't mean there's not an option to set it. I just don't know. So it's going to read all my configuration files, and it's going to look through all my servers in those configuration files and identify each server. So if this was on my other instance, my other DigitalOcean droplet, this would list all of the domain names that I have mapped to that server. It would read all of that and give me a whole list. Here, I only have one option, and it's still going to ask me. And I'm going to say, yes, I want to do this for jessehartloff.com. Then it's going to go through some scripting. It's going to edit my Nginx configuration files. It's going to set those up. It's going to add files to the directories where I'm hosting. Actually, I don't think it does that. It's adding to my configuration. It's changing the root directory to host from a different directory, and then it's adding random stuff to that directory. And then on their server, they're requesting jessehartloff.com/random thing that the script generated, and making sure that it has access to that. That way, it's verifying my identity. It's verifying that I control that server. It's verifying that I control that domain name, most importantly, so it can issue that cert. And then it's creating the cert, signing it. All that stuff already happened in that little bit of time that we had. Here, it's creating challenges, checking them, then cleaning them up, deleting all that stuff it did. And then now it's asking me, okay, you have SSH now. Now what? Do you want to redirect all traffic to HTTPS, which I'm going to do, or do you not want to redirect? Do you want to host HTTP and HTTPS? I'm going to choose the redirect option. And now when I look at my configuration file, we're going to see that certbot actually went in here and made quite a few changes. I'm still listening on port 80 for this server, but port 80 is just redirecting to HTTPS with the same request, the same URL. And then my port 443, certbot said, whatever you were hosting on port 80, we're going to host that on port 443 now. We're going to use these keys that we got generated. This the the cert and the private key, those are the two files we're going to use. Just like the encryption homework, the HTTPS homework, we have the cert and the private key. So we need access to both of those files. Nginx needs access to both of those files. And then it's going to have some extra configuration that it's set up of how to use this, how Nginx should be using these files to get the HTTPS. If we look, we can go etc. Let's encrypt live. So if we go, let me do Pico. Let's encrypt live jessehartloff.com, and I can see my files that were created by certbot. And if I check out the full chain, I should get my certificate. So here's my certificate, my public key signed by Let's Encrypt with all the goodness that we want in this thing. Same thing that we did with OpenSSL when we generated our own self-signed cert in our own private key. But now we have this signed by Let's Encrypt. So with all that, notice I was just install certbot. This is how easy it's supposed to be. Install certbot and run this line and follow the prompts after you run this. That's how easy it's supposed to be. And then when we go back to our website, not secure. Let me refresh that. Secure. That's it. We have HTTPS. Not really too tough. With certbot out there and free, there's no reason to not have HTTPS. Certbot has some limits. If you have a very high traffic site with millions of active users, certbot isn't gonna, they're gonna cap out, and you have to pay for a cert. But for low traffic stuff, certbot is just fine. And I can look at my certificate. I can see my keychain. Where am I? Certificate path. I can see my keychain. Let's Encrypt is actually encrypted by DST root CAX3. So they're going to someone to get their cert signed, and then they offer cert signing services to all of us for free. Can I get details? And yeah, I believe this is RSA by default. So I don't know if you can change that, but at the very least they do support RSA. Certbot. Oh yeah, that's why we're here. Glad at least somebody learned something today. I'm happy, always happy to hear that. Looks like there are some discounts, $50 voucher for something related to a student dev pack tied to GitHub. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, take advantage of that. I'll put the 312 stamp on that, and we'll call that the 312 voucher. But either way, you get a discount there. And you'll notice I made a request to port 80. HTTP is going to default to port 80. So I made a request to port 80. The server got that request for port 80, and it said, no. We're going to give you a 301. Go to the same URL, but with HTTPS instead. So when I got the 301, the location, HTTPS with the same request, redirected me there. I made a request with the redirect with that location, and then got the content that we have on the server. And that'll redirect anything, even if I'm going to be 404'd. HTTP / some other path. I'm still going to get that redirect. It's going to take the host name and whatever I requested, whatever path I requested. With query parameters, everything's preserved. It's just all forwarded to another location. This is another thing, another question that came up. Like, I need localhost for my project configuration. For a lot of your configurations, you need that. But when you deploy, you don't know the host name. But you can usually access the host name in whatever framework, whatever your server, whatever you're working with. Access the host name dynamically. Don't hard code the host name to be localhost, or teamx.cscsoftware.com. Don't hard code that to anything. Just dynamically grab the host name like this, and it doesn't matter. We can use the same configuration for anything. Okay, so that's the full process of hosting a static website. Nginx is going to serve anything in this directory. If I want to add CSS, I want to add JavaScript, I just dump it in that directory. Nginx is hosting it just fine. We have a domain name. We're encrypted. Everything's good with this. If we only want a static site. So next, what we want to do is run a server. We're going to get rid of this static stuff. And what I want to do is run a server, a full website on my app, and I want to redirect traffic to it. We're actually going to go to port 9009 here, and I want to redirect all traffic that I get to port 9009. I'm going to use the HTTP protocol. So I'm going to have Nginx handling all my encrypted traffic over the internet, but once I get that traffic on my server, on my machine, I can decrypt it and then send it locally to another server that I'm running on the same machine or the same droplet and send that unencrypted. So nobody should be able to access this communication because I'm accessing localhost. So I don't have to worry about encryption at this point. Nginx is kind of my front lines. It's handling all the encryption, any traffic coming in from the outside world, any traffic going out to the outside world. All of that is going to be encrypted. But once we're internal to our droplet in this case, or even our network, the encryption is much less important. We're not sending this over Wi-Fi for sure. It's all hardwired. It's the same container, it's the same virtualization. So we're not always concerned about encrypting because when nobody can see that traffic. So this is how we're developing apps that don't have any encryption in them, but we have them behind a proxy server which is handling the encryption. This is how we can write apps that have no idea encryption even exists, but still be secure. That's why for your project, there's no requirements to do HTTPS. There's no requirements to handle certs or any of that. I'm partial to Nginx personally, Jagger. My intent was to show some Apache configuration as well. Maybe we can do that at some point, but I've been partial to Nginx. I used to use Apache exclusively. Once I tried Nginx, I was hooked. The one thing that really drives me nuts with Apache is that it's multi-threaded. Every request, in the sense that every request gets its own thread, which makes it very heavy. It makes it very expensive when you have a lot of users. If you have a lot of concurrent users, each concurrent user gets its own thread and can really jam up a whole machine. And on top of that, Apache has a hard upper limit to the number of connections that can be made simultaneously. And once you hit that upper limit, it just starts denying new requests. And that limit is something by default, something like 200, I think it's 256 users by default. And I really got bit by that one pretty hard. I had, our classes are hundreds of students, so I actually got over that limit with simultaneous users. It was a deadline and everybody was accessing the site at the same time. And I was using WebSockets, so all those connections had to stay open. So it was a kind of a perfect storm of things. And the site just started crashing on the day of a deadline when everybody needs it. And, it just wasn't a good time. Nginx was built from the ground up to solve what's called the 2K, was it the C2K problem? I forget what the acronym is. But it's when you have 2,000 concurrent users, or was it, actually, I think it's more than that. Maybe it's the 10K? Yeah, the C10K. So when you have 10,000 concurrent users, how do you handle this problem? This is something that Apache, at least not without some significant modifications, some plugins, add-ons, and whatnot, can't really handle. Out of the box, it can't handle this. But out of the box, Nginx handles this problem by design. This 10,000 concurrent users, and it does this with lightweight concurrency. Instead of having every request have its own thread, every request each request shares threads. There's still a thread pool, but the requests share threads, but still while getting concurrency by having, I believe, by using. No, I'm not going to go there because I'm speculating a little bit. Do Nginx deal with DDoS? Both of them do, and there are different configurations that you can set up to handle DDoS. Actually, well, DOS at least. DDoS, it's a bit tougher. It's not going to talk about it on its website, but that's another reason to use Apache and Nginx instead of using only your web framework server, a built-in server. Those are reasons why to do that. You know what I should have? The next step is running Docker. I should have been doing this while I was talking there. Let's go to oops, no, it's fine. Let's grab this code. I'm not going to have my SSH set up here. So let's get clone username. And clone this thing, and let's do Docker compose up. Oh no. I did not install Docker. I think it's just install, apt-get install Docker, but I want to make sure. I'm always a little more cautious with a fresh install. I don't want to be messing stuff up. All right. It's not quite as easy as that. Curl, I should have curl already installed. So I have some of these, but I just updated apt-get. All right, let's do some cut and paste here in the interest of time. Why is this? This is a little more painful than I would have hoped. So let's get some keys. Okay. Verification looks good. Pretty low attendance. Yeah, that happens. Yeah, I don't require attendance, so that's what happens. Unfortunately. Which doesn't bother me as long as they're watching the videos and keeping up on the stuff. What bothers me, what some of them have found out in office hours, is when they ask me questions in office hours that I spent like a week covering in lecture. They might as well just come to me and say, hey, I can't be bothered to actually watch lecture. Can you distill it for me and tell me in less time that it would take me to watch the video? That stuff I can't. tolerate. But if you're either not watching lecture live, but watching the YouTube videos, or, just silently failing, to be honest, that's your decision. But it's when they demand my time outside of class. That one drives me nuts. We should be at the end of this then. It should be it. And then we can do do I have to install Docker Compose separately? I don't think that's a thing. Just wondering, but is there any chance this course will be available during the summer? Probably too late for that, or winter. If there are, how would the workload be since it's a lot of information jammed in a fraction of the time? It won't be offered in summer or winter. At least not in the foreseeable future. There we go. At least not in the foreseeable future. This won't be offered in summer or winter. It's a spring only course. And I would guess that it's going to stay that way. The best we could do is offer it fall and spring. But for summer, we'd have to find someone to teach it, and I'm done with summer classes. I've taught summer classes the past 4 or 5 years, I feel like. And when I teach a summer class, I just never get a break. There's just no time to relax. With spring break, fall break, those I'm just spending getting caught up on stuff. Those aren't real breaks. It's just you don't have to lecture for a few days. Winter break, same thing. At least I get a little bit of a breather. But most of winter break, I'm spending getting ready for the next semester. Then a good portion of summer, I'm getting ready for the next semester. So when I'm teaching in summer, I lose that prep time. And nowhere in there is really an actual break except 1 week in the winter. And I'm just sick of that. I gotta worry about my own situation. I feel like I've been staving off burnout for years now, and I need some breaks. So probably not summer unless somebody else can teach this class and teach in the summer. But that said, if you're only interested in the content, all these videos are on YouTube. Head over to the YouTube channel. So another reason to why I use Nginx is to pass SSL to non-SSL versus my own app server, because that would be using port 80. Yes, that doesn't factor into the Apache versus Nginx conversation, though, because Apache will do the same thing for you. You just do certbot -- Apache, and it'll set up the same thing for you there. But that is one of the reasons. It's one reason I like Nginx. It's that frontline handling encryption, and keep the encryption and everything, all the real world interaction stuff, separate from my app logic. So when I'm developing my app, it's just one less thing to worry about. When I want to add this new feature, is this going to work over encrypted? Say I want to add WebSockets. Do I add WS and WSS? What protocols do I use? No, I just use the unencrypted version when I'm developing, and then let Nginx or Apache take care of it from there. They'll take care of the the other details. Why can't you use the same course layout for the following year? What do you mean? Why can't you use the same course layout for the following year? I will. I'll... Oh, you mean for all my prep time? Yeah, but there's still a lot that goes into it. Well, part of it's my fault, because I always want to tweak things. I always want to improve things. Like this class, I'm sure this semester you can point out a lot of things where the course needs some improvements, and I can see how those things, I want to improve those, I want to fix those, smooth out some issues, and always work on courses. For more mature courses like 116, I'm going through the 3rd iteration of that right now, so it's starting to settle down. But even then, I want to update homework assignments. I want to update some slides. I can't just keep running the same homework assignments each semester, because the solutions will be out there. So I always want to update assignments, at least change them a little bit. Usually I'm introducing new assignments each year, new projects each year. So a lot of that work doesn't really go away. But it will start settling down once I'm happy. If I'm ever happy with like 116, which probably won't happen. But if I'm ever happy with it, we can start. I can start getting more breaks. At least winter break. If I were teaching summer classes, because you teach a 12-week summer class, there's the end of the fall semester or the end of the spring semester. You get 1 week of downtime, and then the 12-week semester, summer semester starts. That semester ends, and then there's 1 week of downtime, and then the fall starts. So there's only 2 weeks of break in there. So getting a new course ready, and it's always multiple courses. I'm teaching at least 2 courses each semester, except the summer would just be 1 class. So you only get 1 week to prepare 2 classes, unless you can prepare some of it during the summer class, which usually has to happen. But there's no room in there for like what anyone would call a break. So Docker's running these containers. Let's see what we get. Let's see what we installed. Hopefully something. Nothing. Let me open a new window so I'm not running that in detach mode. Whoa, not that. Root add. I never reloaded the configuration for Nginx after I changed that configuration file. So let's see what we get. And hey, we get a game and it works. Oh, I love it when things work. So you can go here right now. You can play the game with me. These blue circles that are following a very set path, those are all AI characters that are helping us out. And then any dot that's really off the beaten path like that, that's a player. So here, yeah, we got some players. And then our goal is to charge that square. These towers are kind of deadly. Yeah, in there. And we can see all the requests coming in. We don't really need to see the logs though. And there is a lot of traffic, a lot of communication on this WebSocket. This is not optimized. This is not particularly great for performance. Because it's running at, so if you're curious, this is running at 30 frames per second. And each frame, we're getting the entire game state over the WebSocket. So 30 times a second, you're getting this big old JSON thing. And I wonder if I'm leaking security information. I might be here. What can you do with the socket ID? So you're getting this big old JSON 30 times a second. So you might hear your fan spin up a little bit, just to be aware. This is a very kind of thin client e-game where the logic is happening on the server, and then all that's happening on the GUI side is rendering the game state to visualize the game to you, and then capturing your keyboard inputs. Not this sounds bad when I say it like that. Not your keyboard inputs, but your key states. So between left, right, up, and down, which keys are down, which keys are up at the current moment. Woohoo! Got in there. Which keys are up and down at the current moment. So those are what are being sent, and you can watch. You can see my console every time I press or release a key. It's going to send that new key state. Every time the state of my 4 keys are changing, it's going to send that to the server. And the server is running all the physics. The server is running all the AI logic. The server is running all the tower logic. All of that's happening on the server end for this. So if you're curious about some architecture too. And we have that. Well, I can't do anything with that window. I'll run it in detach mode after. And since this is the only thing running on the server, we shouldn't have slowdown issues. Even with that, so you would think that would take up a lot of resources, and it kind of does. 25% CPU. Yeah, it does. Once we have a lot of users, it might start sputtering. Keep forgetting which one it was. This one. I forgot what I was in here checking, to be honest. What was I doing? ETC. No. So we're getting any inputs for jessehartloff.com and forwarding that to port 9009. So all of that traffic, including WebSockets, we have these two lines to make sure WebSockets are able to get through as well. So all that traffic that's coming in on jessehartloff.com is being forwarded to that in my Docker container. Forwarding anything that comes over port 9009 to port 80 inside the container. Inside the Nginx container that I'm running. And then hidden directories. And in my Docker Compose, I actually don't need a database for this game. We're just running Nginx and the app. So really, oh no, I can't. Never mind. So I'm running Nginx and the app. Nginx, that's what's getting all the traffic for this. So port 9009 localhost, I'm mapping to 80 in Nginx. Nginx, with no encryption, no certs or anything, is hosting this whole site. And my app is also running. Running in here in my Nginx Docker file is taking some of my configuration and copying some static files into that directory that we saw earlier. And this Nginx instance has a configuration file that's listening on port 80 and doing what we saw the first time when we were first in Nginx configuration file. I'm hosting anything in this directory as static files, so I get nice caching and everything. Index.html is the root. And then if I get a request for socket.io, forward that to my app. Send that to my app, port 8080. So I have two servers listening on two separate ports and everything. I have that issue here, but I'm letting Nginx be the router for that, effectively, where if I get something on this path, look for a static file. On any path, look for a static file. Otherwise, look for send it to if you get a request for /socket.io, which is the socket connections, forward that with all the socket stuff and real IP, which doesn't exist. This isn't really being used for this one. But send that to the app port 8080, and then my app is running in a separate container listening to on port 8080 for WebSocket connections. And some extra default configuration. I used the default. I modified the default configuration file for that one. And yeah, that's our configuration. Then I showed this before, but just one more time. This is a Docker file that's installing Java, Scala, SBT, Maven, and then building my project with Maven. That's compiling all of my Scala code, packaging it all in a jar, downloading the dependencies, doing all that goodness. Then I'm running the jar file that was generated by Maven.